Sean Dwan, they tell me that there's only one greater fear in life, bigger than death, that is, and that is the fear of public speaking. You're here to debunk that myth and tell us that that's not necessarily the case.
It is, Nicky, but you can actually control it, and that's the key, because most people don't know what they're supposed to be doing when they're speaking in public, and they need to know and need to have a format when they are asked to speak in public or deliver a business presentation or a keynote speech. And it's okay to be on edge, but you need to be able to control nervousness, and there's numerous ways of controlling nervousness. And one of them would be breathing. And I always tell my clients, you need to practice breathing through your nose and exhaling through your mouth. And a great way to practice would be when you're out walking is to check and see, are you inhaling through your nose and exhaling through your mouth? And then suddenly, when you're checking that regularly, you'll find, I do that naturally now. And then when you begin to panic, when you're delivering presentations or speaking in public, you'll find that you're actually breathing through your nose, and you take in 4.5 times more air when you're breathing through your nose than when you're breathing through your mouth. Because oxygen is what we run out of when we're actually nervous. And there's a whole lot of things happening to our body. So think of your diaphragm. You need to be breathing in through your diaphragm. And it's quite challenging to do that if you're breathing through your mouth. But the main thing to remember is you're taking in a lot more air.
Right, breathing through your nose. Why are people so fearful of getting up on stage?
One of the things would be they're afraid of judgment. They're also afraid they're going to make a bangs of it, or they're not going to do well. But judgment is a big thing. People are afraid of being judged, and then they're in front of other people as well. Now, most people that are looking at them don't really care, but the speaker themselves are overly concerned about it. So they're not as engaged as you think they are. Now, how do people get engaged, though? What's the number one thing you need when you're speaking? I call it the big E. It's enthusiasm. You have to be enthusiastic when you're speaking. Otherwise, people will tune out. They'll be on their phones. They'll be going out to the back room, and they won't be in a hurry back either. Now, some of them even won't come back. And this is a challenge. So when you're asked to deliver business presentations, keynote speeches, or a general talk to a group, they need to benefit from listening to you. Otherwise, they shouldn't be there.
Should be value in it.
And you shouldn't be there either.
Yeah.
So engagement is absolutely crucial. And as I said, the number one thing you need when you're speaking is enthusiasm. Just listen to this. You could waffle for 10 minutes, but if you're enthusiastic about it, people will go outside the door and they'd say, that's another waffle, but I heard everything. And you'll have some people that are highly academically acclaimed, and they're the CEOs of even large companies, and what will most of them do? They'll be speaking like this. You can't hear them, and there's no engagement, and that's called monotone. Now, there are a whole lot of aspects to disengaging people. Monotone is the number one, though, because you could be a brilliant mind, but if you don't engage people by way of your voice, people will tune out.
We better take a step back and ask you the seminal question. Who are you? And what do you do?
I take the fear out of people's lives. And usually people will ask you about that, because just imagine, if you meet somebody and they ask you what you do and you say, I'm an accountant, they're not going to ask you anything about it probably. But if I tell them I take the fear out of people's lives, it gives me the opportunity to tell them. And I love telling them because I love what I do. Right? I love what I do. And I have to tell a story, and I do tell this quite regularly. I was asked to do a wedding speech. I was the best man at my brother's wedding back in around 1980. And I stood up and I said, thank you all for coming. I hope you have a great day. And what did I do then? I said, that was my speech. And I never forget it. But what I do remember about it was the stress, the fear, and the sweat. I'm even mentioning it now because that's how it affected me. And that's many, many, many years ago.
So just to deliver those 2 lines.
Yeah. Well, I was expected to do more, but I just put was absolutely frightening.
Tell me about the emotions that you were feeling.
You see, that's the big thing too, because even today when people are speaking, you need to have a bit of an edge, but you don't want to be in a situation like I was that particular day where you can't open your mouth. You're sweating all over your body. Your palms are sweaty. Your underarms are sweaty. Now, prior to that particular wedding speech, 2 sentences, I said, is there anything I can do to get out of this for maybe a month at least before it, right? A month at least. And then it accumulates and gets worse as you come near the time. And then you're out to the loo and you come back in. Then you're out to the loo about 5 minutes later again. And then you're out to the loo again. And it's absolutely terrible feeling.
And of course, you can't talk to anybody about this because nobody will understand what you're going through.
No, they wouldn't.
And B, you don't want to let your manhood down, so you're not going to expose your weaknesses in the lead up to this meeting.
No, you don't bother telling anybody about it. You just try and deal with it best you can yourself. Occasionally, you might mention to somebody, have you any idea what I should do? But back in those days, there was no way to tell you. Now, there's a lot of people around that would give you advice. Now, having said that, you can get advice, but you need to train to be actually able to be a very competent wedding speech speaker or in any particular situation, whether it's business or otherwise.
So you're Sean Dwan, you're a teacher, you're a coach, you're a
coach, trainer, I suppose is what I'd be.
Okay.
My background is in selling engineering machinery to multinationals and SMEs. And then when the crash came in 2008, the economic crash, which everybody worldwide would be aware of, and I had invested in the company. I was a director there and I lost a lot of money in it. And then, you see, you had to go do something. But it's a change of career when you're about 50, and that's not the easy thing to do. But you dig in, and wouldn't it be absolutely fantastic if I could train people in the area that I was ultra weak in years and years ago? And I had some experience because I joined Toastmasters in the year 2000. And the funny thing about that was I met a woman on the street one day in Neenah, that's my town in County Tipperary, which is in the middle of Ireland. And she said to me, had you ever heard of Toastmasters? And I said, no. And she told me about some people that were actually in it. And she said, do you know any of them? And I said, no. And then about 2 weeks later, this is a particular woman that you can say anything to, and she'd say anything to you. And she said, Sean, when you join Toastmasters? And I said to her, Mary, I don't need to be in Toastmasters. And I think when anybody says they don't need to be in Toastmasters, they need to be in Toastmasters. It's so true. And finally then, I had a suit on one day and she said, this fella should be in Toastmasters. Why? I don't know. And the third time she said, Sean, I need you to join Toastmasters. And to actually get rid of her because she became an irritation, I actually joined Toastmasters.
And was she part of Toastmasters?
She was. She was carpet Toastmaster. And she was at it for a good few years.
Did she think that you needed to join Toastmasters because you were crap at public speaking, or because you had a good voice and you were able?
No, it was just she was like somebody picking up somebody in the street or a bus. She was that sort of a lady. She was a fantastic woman.
But she obviously knew that there was something about Toastmasters that would be of value to you.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But your Toastmasters is of value to everybody. Why? Because it gives you the confidence to actually start speaking or to engage socially with people who are speaking. And then in Toastmasters, you get to evaluate other people and other people evaluate you. And you learn things about maybe management skills, some leadership skills, interview skills, training, and of course speaking. And a big one, Nicky, is listening. Most people do not listen. Because you do meet people on the street even. You're walking down the street and you might start talking to somebody, and they're probably thinking of what they want to ask you while you were actually telling them something. So you have to listen to people. Listening is a brilliant skill. And I've only developed that over the last probably 25 years.
The point is that you're distracted and you're not listening to the person you're preparing for what you're going to say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that goes on an awful lot. Even when you go to network events, you'll be explaining to people what to do and they're looking off somewhere else or they're not listening intently.
Yeah.
And then they'll ask you, what did you say you do? That goes on. And that's a pity because it's sort of disrespectful in a way. They can't help it sometimes, but it is disrespectful. And I think if you remember that, you'll probably will listen better.
Let's go back then to the wedding. So we've got sweaty hands. What am I going to say? How do I remember the words that I prepared? Complete fear, panic. What other emotions are going on?
You don't remember anything you've prepared for. And then you decide, well, I do something quite quickly if I can. And that was the 2 sentences I said. That's exactly what I said. Thank you all for coming. I had about a 4 or 5 minute speech. Thank you all for coming. I hope you had a great day. And I sat down.
And when you were actually standing up to give your speech, tell me about your deportment. So how were you standing? Were you hot stepping it? Were you holding on to a chair for dear life?
Oh, yeah. I'm onto a chair. Yeah. So I got out from the table a little, but it was only about maybe 2 feet or maybe 24 inches. But it was to get away from the wedding party more than anything else. So you're hanging on tightly to the back of the chair. And your legs are shaking as well. Everything is shaky, but particularly your voice. And somebody did say to me then afterwards, you were very nervous up there. And I said, yeah. And they obviously noticed my voice was quaking like that. And then you sort of feel worse. But when somebody comes up to you and says, yeah, no, you were great. You were very short. That was the great thing about it. And that sort of gives you a bit of a lift in a way.
You've just reminded me of a terrific story that my father used to tell. He was flying to Rome to his brother's ordination in 1963. And he was traveling with a first cousin, and the first cousin was petrified of flying. Now, I mean, totally petrified. So he sat in his seat in the aircraft, and he held on to the seat back in front of him, like this. And he put his hands around there from the moment he got on the plane until the moment he landed. And when the plane stopped, he released his grip off the headrest. And the man in front of him turned around and said, well, thanks be to God for that, because he had held on to his hair.
A lot of it is the fear of the unknown as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you fear the unknown, you're changed quite seriously.
I'm wondering, are there, like in that moment leading up to the wedding speech in this case, we talk about fear a lot. Are there any other emotions that are attached to it? Is there a sense of shame? Is there a sense of sadness even,
You're being judged by people, and that's going through your mind all the time. And what did they think of me? And that would be quite disconcerting to you. It's like being in a cement mixer. You're just going around like that. And there's a whole lot of ideas and emotions in the mixer. And that's in your head. And it's very, very disconcerting. And you actually can get dizzy as well. It was like standing up waiting to win the lotto, and then you don't win the lotto. There's a multitude of emotions going on there. There's shame as well. You mentioned the word shame. Like he made a right dog's dinner of it. And what are they going to think of me?
It's a paradox, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Because on one hand, we're saying, let's not give a shit about what people think about us, right? So that's what we should be doing, not really worrying about what other people. But if you're delivering something, if you're delivering a speech or a eulogy or a keynote, you do want people to give a shit. You do want people to listen to you and to take on board what you're saying. So there's a dance there between not caring, devil may care, and actually delivering value, isn't it?
Yes. Now, I'm a Toastmasters for 25 years now. But in 2008, then I went to the US and I trained over there to be a professional trainer. And that program was absolutely fantastic. People need to know they're doing the right thing by way of their structure, by way they're delivering it, by the way they cause. There's a whole bunch of things you need to adhere to. And most people don't know that. Just even take pausing, for example. So if I said to you, do you know where I'm going tomorrow? There's a likelihood you'll want to know where he's going tomorrow. Whereas if I said, I'm going to Limerick tomorrow, or I'm going to Dublin tomorrow, there's nothing really to that. And you won't want to be asking anything about it. But pausing is very, very powerful. The challenge for most people is, though, they're afraid to pause. Because here we are now with silence. But silence is golden. Silence is absolutely golden when you're speaking. But the vast majority of people never do it. They don't know about it and its effectiveness and how it can grab attention to an audience. Because most people will look up at you if you pause. Because they'll want to know, did he or she have a heart attack or what's happening here? And it's brilliant for actually engaging and conveying a powerful message. Because that's what we have to do. We have to convey a powerful message. And when you're speaking, the audience have to benefit. Otherwise, they shouldn't be there, or you shouldn't be there. And it's a tough business, But I feel that I can actually put people in a position. I can train people to be in a position where they're able to do this. But you have to practice. Irrespective of how much time to spend with me, you have to practice it every day, if you can. Whether you're speaking to your teams, as a leader, or whatever you're doing within the corporate sector, the SMEs, or even individuals. Because I train a lot of individuals. I also train in corporate sector. I also train people in SMEs. This gives you an idea how much preparation you need. Because if I'm training a group from an SME or from the corporate sector, the maximum I'll train at one time would be 8 people. That would take at least 12 hours. Maybe 2 full days or 4 half days with at least a week in between, because they have to prepare. Because they're going to be delivering 7-minute presentations, and it's going to be video recorded. It's going to be evaluated by everybody in the room. And then they get a video via an email. And that's great for learning as well, because they can actually view it and see, yeah, I could have done that differently. Or I think I did that very well. Now, you need to have fun doing it as well, because it relaxes people as well. And even if you're speaking and people laugh because you said something, it does relax the whole audience, and it relaxes you even further. But the main thing is to be prepared. Preparation is key. Prepare, and prepare. That's what you got to do. Because there's a lot of people who stand up and speak, but they're not good at it. But they have the gumption to stand up, which is great, but they need to know how to actually do it to engage people.
I'm interested in the reasons that people are fearful of public speaking. We talked about a good few of them already, right? So it's pure naked fear for a start. It's the shame. It's the fear of judgment, all that stuff. I'm thinking back to some of our Christmas dinners, right? Or any occasion, any family occasion that you might have had with the big extended family around the table. And even in that intimate space, people are afraid of their lives to say anything that might even resemble a speech or a remark, you know. So why is it so guttural? Why is it so deep in us, that fear?
We're always striving for perfection. Perfection does not exist, but we're striving for it all the time. And there are people that would strive for perfection, irrespective. They might be on maybe the autistic spectrum sometimes, and they're brilliant people, but they want to be perfect all the time. And that adds an awful lot of stress. They're referred to as maladaptive because they can't adapt to excellence, but not, and I repeat, not perfection. There is no such thing as perfection. No matter how good you do something, it's not going to be perfect. And then you'll be thinking about it afterwards as well. And then you'll say, no, I should have done that. I should have done this. And then as a result of all of that, when you're actually speaking, then you're nervous as well. The other thing we should do is stand up, because although some people are afraid to stand up, they prefer to be sitting down, but you have a lot more authority, not in an authoritarian way, when you actually stand up, because people will actually look at you.
If I'm doing the Christmas dinner thing, my natural inclination is to hide, the table, while I'm delivering my speech like this, you see. So it's a hiding mechanism.
Yeah, there's a hiding, yeah. And lots of people would do that too. I even see sometimes in boardrooms, you know, because you have tables which are sort of up around or like that. And if anybody is speaking in a boardroom, I think they should be standing up anyway, because otherwise people don't take that much notice of them. But they like to be sitting down, and they don't like to be seen. But this happens all the time. You need to have a table where everybody can be seen, because you would be like me outside the door there talking to you in here. If you can't see somebody, it's no good. You need to be able to see the person, because body language is a big thing. Also, you need to be smiling. Now, sometimes when you're nervous, it's difficult to smile. But you know what a smile is, Nick? A smile is a weapon of mass seduction. It really is, because it engages people. And it says, okay, we can relax in the audience as well, because sometimes in an audience, they're expected maybe to ask a question, and they'll be afraid to ask a question. And audiences can be quite nervous too, even though you're the speaker stroke presenter, and you can be a bit on edge as well. And it's always good to be on edge, but you have to be able to control it all. Use stories. Stories are very powerful. Personal stories particularly. It's very engaging, but it has to relate to the subject you're talking about. You can't just tell a story about the mafia or something like that, or whatever it is. It has to be applicable to what you're talking about. Now, the three things that I have, and they are steak, sizzle, and style. They're the three core principles when you're speaking. They are core principles. What do you think steak might be, Nicky?
Is it the meat?
There you have it in one there. It's the content. You have to be knowledgeable. Now, most people that are asked to speak have the knowledge. They don't know, they're not going to know everything, and that's fine. And then you have sizzle. Can you imagine a steak on a pan? Then you throw on the mushrooms or the onions or whatever it is that excites you, and it's hopping up and down in the pan like that. That's sizzle. That's stories and examples. And then you have style, which is your voice and your non-verbal. The style would be, how is it presented on the plate to you? You make eye contact with every single person in that room. Like, I'm making eye contact with you now for 3 to 5 seconds. That's what needs to do. Now I'm making eye contact with Mary over here. Now I'm making eye contact with Paul here. And that's the way to make eye contact. It engages everybody. 3 to 5 second mini conversation is what we're called. Now, some people will say to me, well, how do you make eye contact with 300 people? You can make eye contact with every single individual if there's 300 people in the audience, but you will make eye contact like I'm doing now. You look off in the corners like that, and you can take in 30 or 40 people. You'll do likewise over here, then you might go back there, then you might go back here again, because I don't want people I don't want people to do that because that's not natural.
Talk to me about your early days. How did your youth and development and maybe your early 20s, how did that contribute to this place that you're in today?
My father was very, very quiet. My mother was very educational oriented because I'm from a small farm background. And I was sent to a boarding school. It was St. Fannan's College in Ennis, in County Clare in Ireland. And I remember the first time I went into it, I was only 12 at the time. It was in September. It was a stone building, cut stone. And it was very, very, very daunting. And you were there for 3 months until Christmas time. But it's amazing. You just become accustomed to it away. It's like, it's habit forming, I suppose, to some extent. And the great thing was that everybody else in first year there, when we were 12 or 13, found it had very daunting, but we got used to it. And then as you progressed, you're sort of familiar with the whole scenario. It was quite rigid from a discipline point of view. And one of the great things about it was, my point of view, is I was good at hurling. Now, hurling is a game a lot of people wouldn't know about, but in Ireland, it's a very, very highly skillful game. And it just shows you the way the thing was run, in the sense that the people playing on the team, we used to get soup at lunchtime and nobody else would. And we also used to get French fries or chips, as we do, but the others wouldn't. And then I remember we decided to go on strike. And the reason we were going on strike was because when we come out of class at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, then we go for our tea. We would have bread, but no butter. They wouldn't give us any butter, but raspberry jam. And I hate the sight of raspberry jam. And what I remember was the peeps actually sticking in your teeth. No butter, of course. But anyway, the strike fell asunder because we hadn't got the leadership or the commitment to do it, and we continued on with our raspberry jam and bread. And when I left school then, and I started playing hurling at senior level with my club, and it was a very, very strong club. And what really dented my confidence was the first day I played, I was only 17 at the time, I actually scored a goal in that game. And I remember the report on the paper the next day was, and young Dwan scored a goal beyond reproach. Because it was a brilliant goal, but it was sort of fluky at the same time. And it gave me a lot of confidence. And then the second match I played, I was quite good as well. And then the third match, I missed a chance right towards the end. And the match was a draw. And lo and behold, they didn't play me the next day. But the way they handled it was totally mismanaged. And I used to wear number 14 jersey because on a hurling team, there are 15. And they just threw the jersey at me. They didn't give me the jersey. They just threw a jersey at me. It was number 18. And I remember that as clearly. And that really affected my confidence for years. although I did get hurling afterwards, but I had lost my confidence for some reason or another. And I can still see that jersey coming towards me and sitting there. And I was very, very downhearted. And nobody came to me and said anything. I think that was one of my low points in my confidence building back in those days when I was probably 20. And then I was always a slow learner as well. And at school, I found it challenging to pick up stuff. But when I got it, I was brilliant at it. And then I found myself working on a building site because my parents told me I can't stay in Dublin because it was costing the money. And that's the only regret I had really about my educational tour of duty. And then, as I said, I found bits and pieces of work because it was very challenging to get work at the time. So I was working at building sites as a labourer. And I remember one day what changed my life was that the guy I was working for, there was only 4 or 5 of us in the company working. I was only sort of part-time there, maybe during summer holidays or so. But he said to me just a week before Christmas, he says, Sean, I don't need you anymore. He didn't want to pay me over Christmas. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me because I was very downhearted at that time because I needed money because I was socially on the warpath at the time and you want to be going for a few drinks and enjoy yourself over Christmas and I hadn't got the money to do it. But that got me to go to London in the middle of January the following year. So that cement mixer and the wheelbarrow changed my life and that builder. And I couldn't believe it. I was offered 2 jobs over there quite quickly. One was in the West End of London in finance. I didn't take it on. But the other one was in the engineering business where I was back up to keep it selling high-value engineering machinery to multinationals and SMEs. And I was involved with selling the accessories for a particular type of machinery. The great thing I had, though, Nicky, was I had a great work ethic.
I also note that you must have had some sense of confidence about you because you don't go for sales jobs. Well, one traditionally doesn't go for sales jobs unless one has some semblance of personality and confidence. Is that a misnomer or is that?
Yeah, that's a sort of a misnomer in a way because I couldn't get a job at Ireland at the time. And I was forced to do this. It was office-based. And there were 7 of us there in the office. There was, the great thing about it was to multicultural because there was a guy from Australia. There was a man from Canada. There was a guy from the Dominican Republic. And I was there as an Irish person. And there was a couple of English lads as well. So we had a great working team, although they were all working in different areas of the accessories. And then there was 2 or 3 girls in the office as well. And we had a manager. But everything was very dictatorial though in a way. That's why I left. I left after about 5 years because I said I need to be doing something else now. I have enough done with this and I learned quite a bit. And then I got a job in Ireland. That's how I ended to getting to the engineering business in Ireland, selling engineering machinery to multinationals and SMEs. And again, a lot of confidence in it. And then I set up a division in the company, which hadn't been there before. And I said, I can do a few things now. I'm just realizing. And I became very, very good at selling this stuff. But I mentioned to you earlier on there because trust is a key thing in selling. Trust. And Keeping said to me a few times, I trust you. That's why I buy from you. And that gave me a great start. And then you get more confidence then as you go along. Now, having said that, I used to have to do presentations, sometimes to potential buyers. And that was quite daunting still. But I overcame it because I was confident enough about the machinery, not the technical side of it, but I knew how it would benefit them if they purchased the machinery. And then the trust came into play. And that's how I won contracts from people that already had competitors' machines. And that gave me more confidence and wanting to learn all the time. Because the machinery was computerized stuff and it was complicated and it had to do a job. And it was very precision orientated, some of it.
You're hitting on a very interesting area because, as you know, public speaking and the art of communication for me is a lifelong pursuit. I've been interested in it for donkey's years and I'm trying to get better at it every day. And I think by viewing it as a process and as a field of study, you can poke into little different areas all the time and learn a little bit here, learn a little bit there. But I'm interested in the notion of confidence. So you can't, or can you teach people how to be confident? Or is it about teaching people the skills to go do the thing, like public speaking, which in itself builds the confidence?
I train people because I tell them what you need when they're actually expected to speak in an event. And there's a whole bunch of things you have to have. The first thing, you need a format, Nicky. First thing you do when you're speaking is you have to grab attention. Most people will not do that. Some people are afraid to do it anyway. Then you'll tell them the benefits that they're going to achieve today. And then the third thing, this is all in the introduction. Then you have a preview, and the preview tells them exactly, and I mean exactly what you're going to talk about today. Because I find sometimes, even in the corporate sector, that people are told to come to a room, say 102 or something like that, and they get an email maybe on a Tuesday, and this is happening then on a Friday. They'll waltz up to the room, and the presenter will be there. Now, these people that they were notified about it, they have forgotten all about this because they have other stuff going on in their lives by way of the business, and the presenter will not tell them what this is about. So it's key. It sounds simple, but it's not done most of the time. They need to know what the subject is. This is what we're talking about today and the challenges we have in this area. But they won't bother telling them that because sometimes nobody knows what's in your head. Nobody knows what's in your head. But we have an assumption that, yeah, they know. No, they don't. Then they'll be guessing as to what it was about because there was no concentration on it. The format then is you need a body. You need to prepare your body first to all this. You do a mind map. A mind map is about putting a word or a statement on a white sheet of paper. Circle it, and then just write feverishly for 5 minutes about everything that's in your mind, and it's in your subconscious. You don't like to be thinking about it, and you'll write, and then you'll just start up when you're finished. You have a whole lot of stuff written, and then that's going to be the main thrust of your presentation or your speech. And you pick out 3 or 4 things out of that. That's what you'll use as your presentation. The maximum number of points you'd have will be 5. And that's what you prepare first. Why do you prepare the body first? You prepare the body first because usually what people do is prepare the introduction first, which are 3 things I mentioned earlier. Grab attention. What's in it for me being the person in the audience. That's the benefits. And then you have the preview. You tell them exactly what they're going to be talking about, and then you go into your body. The body is like a chest of drawers. Can you imagine 3 drawers in your bedroom or in the kitchen or whatever? That's what you do. And then you have your conclusion. We're already preparing it now at this stage. The conclusion then is a brief summary of what you spoke about. Then you'll identify the benefits again. Identifying the benefits again is the same as your introduction, more or less. You could use a different phraseology so as it doesn't sound too contrived. And finally, then, you grab their attention. Because they need to take away something, message with them. Alone we can do so little. Together we can do so much. Or something like that. Or a short story relevant to what you're talking about. But you need to finish strongly.
Go back to your working life then in the corporate world. You're saying that curiosity is the thing that kept you going. So your work ethic and your curiosity and your determination to get better at delivering presentations and sales meetings and whatever.
I feel that I'm highly skilled now, but I'm learning all the time at the same time because I will look at if somebody mentions something on, say, LinkedIn or maybe a newsletter or something, and it's connected with what I'm doing, I will always read it in detail. I might even print it off, and I have it. There might be a little nugget in there that I haven't thought about, but then I make a note of it.
You're always learning.
I'm always making notes associated with the business that I'm in. Yeah, because I want to be better at it. I suppose in a way I'm sort of seeking perfection, and I know well it doesn't exist. And I love doing it because of when the wedding speech that I spoke about, and it's marvelous to actually help people.
When you look back at your working life in the corporate sector, would you say that this was the big gap or one of the big gaps that you had?
I mentioned earlier on there, my work ethic and people trusted me. And I was always very helpful to people anyway, because you remember I mentioned earlier on there at the start of this that I'm from a farming background. And I often thought about people buying tractors and machinery, and you'd say to yourself, now, I wonder, is that person selling the machinery, are they selling the right machinery to them? And that gave me a great insight into, say, put yourself in the customer's shoes. And I always did that in business, because I'd even lose a sale if I got it the wrong thing, and they might be even anxious to buy it. I'd say no, because it won't do this, and it won't do that.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, by striving to be authentic and by striving to tell the truth and to talk about stuff that you really know about, that helps to tell your story better, and it helps people to build trust in you.
There are people that you would find it challenging to trust, and they're not authentic either, and they're telling you things that aren't true. And I said earlier on about maybe exaggerating statistics. I had no problem with that. I don't bother doing it, but it's acceptable to me. Because if you say, oh, okay, I have, say, 500 customers, and you might have only 450. 500 sort of sounds better, but it doesn't make any difference to the person buying, in a sense. But they are impressed by it. Something like that. I shouldn't be even saying this, but it's so true, though. And I consider it acceptable, because I'm not perfect either.
Yeah, I think the point is for people on the other end of your message, so the people in an audience, if the person speaking is authentic and they trust that person, nobody cares if you make a mistake.
Most people don't care. They actually like to see you vulnerable as well, in some way, as long as you sort of can take on and continue on and maybe say something funny. Sometimes I tell people, if you're really stuck, you could ask the audience a question, maybe a rhetorical question even. But the thing to do is to write down some simple question you can ask, because if you go blank for some reason, you might be able to think of the situation. I manage it all right because I'm sort of used to it, but most people would find that challenging. So I always tell them to get an index card or a post-it note and write a short question on it. And then if you go blank, just pose it to the audience and let them kick about it. Or maybe even let them answer.
Gives you a whole new appreciation for comedians.
Yeah.
So if a comedian goes blank, which they can do, and they have to have all these little tips and tricks to get them back, and asking the audience a question is a great way to buy yourself some time and then move on. I want to talk about your physicality on stage or behind the lectern or in front of the wedding party, whatever situation you find yourself in.
Monotone is the biggest turn off about it, because speaking like that, you would be telling them the one to laugh at and the one hear it. They really won't. So, and your voice is the greatest marketing tool of all, as far as I'm concerned. Now, talking about body language, I will not stand behind the lectern because I want to move all the time, because it's natural. It's not natural to stand behind a lectern, but the vast majority will do it. Now, I did a talk in University Concert Hall in Limerick, and I was the only one who walked around. And there were consultants there of all shapes and sizes. I just couldn't do it. You need to be moving around, because if we were talking to somebody out in, say, a car park, we'd sort of move a bit, wouldn't we? And then making eye contact as well, because when you're walking around a bit, you have to be careful about pacing as well. There's a balance to all of that. In that particular situation, because the stage is massive anyway, and there was about 700 people there, you need to walk around sort of more than I would suggest normally, because the stage is so big and the auditorium is very large. But you have to be careful about pacing, because that can be an irritation and it can distract people as well. But the idea would be to go maybe 2 or 3 steps to the left, stop, speak to the group, make eye contact, and then maybe walk back to the center again, stop, maybe for a minute, and then move on again to the right. That's what you need to do, because that's something natural. And we need to be natural when we're doing it.
How are you breathing? Where are your hands?
Some people put one hand in the pocket. I'm totally against that. You have to have your 2 hands out. You have to be demonstrative in what you're saying. And as a result, then, your point will come across.
Let's take your chosen subject, which is public speaking, and go all the way back to the start of your career. So what would you advise the young Sean to do in terms of building this skill that you have now?
The simple answer is get some training, like what I didn't get. because I needed training when I was in my 20s, but there was nobody there to do it at the time, really. Then sometimes you'd be afraid to ask as well because you don't want to do it. So there's conflict going on in your mind here. But I train people now maybe in their mid-20s sometimes, but they're very reluctant to do it. And most of them will go on AI. AI is fine, but there's no personality with AI. There's no eye contact with AI either. There's no smiling one. Well, maybe there is smiling. You build no connection with an audience if you're depending on AI. But it's a brilliant tool in loads of ways. It will develop a format for you. It will develop technical issues for you. And it will do many other things as well. But there is no emotional connection by way of AI. And you have to have emotional connection with your audience. That's why smiling and eye contact is very important, because it's all about connection.
Talk to me about pace.
If I said to you, I'm angry today, you'd probably say, Sean, let's have a coffee. But if I said to you, Nicky, I'm angry today, there's a great chance you'll ask me what I'm angry about. The same applies if you're sticking to groups. Inflection, you need to be going up and down. I describe it, it's like waves on the sea. That's what you need to think about. You need to raise your voice, and then you can lower it for certain things. What do you think he did? Then you raise your voice to tell him what you think he did. That's an example. But just to repeat, think of waves on the sea. That's the way your voice needs to go. Not as regular as that, and you need to speak slowly as well. But clarity is the big thing. And particularly now, because we're speaking multicultural to loads of different people, and they would have learned the English like we did. But now what I find we're doing is we're not pronouncing the INGs at the ends of words, and we're tripping words, and we're finishing up like that. And that's a no-no as well. So you have to be ultra careful about pronunciation. I will see you tomorrow. I will see you this evening. Not I'll see you this evening. That's not good enough. You and I would probably understand that, but most people, particularly if they're not from, or English isn't their first language, they won't know what that is, and they probably won't ask to either. It's absolutely crucial that they benefit, and you have to do a whole bunch of things for them to benefit. Let me tell you a story. You see, if you say something like that and you pause is so powerful, and they will tell the story with a degree of conviction.
If we go back right to the very start of our conversation today, we talked about and we wondered, why are people so afraid? Why are people so fearful of doing that? I can't do it. I won't be any good. I'll be shit. I am not made for public speaking. So what is that? Only limiting beliefs. So it's a belief or a decision that somebody has made about themselves that stops them from getting up to deliver the great speech, you know. So that's one of the big things. It's a limiting belief that we have, that we can't do it.
Yeah, no, I can't do it. I hear that quite regularly. Every single person can do it. The thing to remember, Nicky, would be everybody has their own style, because I don't want them to be like me. I can't be like them because we're so individualistic. We're all unique people with unique skills. We have a skill that nobody else has. We mightn't know what it is. Every single person has a skill nobody else has. And I tell them that all the time. And I tell them what the great things they have. I get them to speak for 1 minute, and I know their strengths and the areas to improve. And then you compliment them on the great things they had without being totally overboard. And then this is what we're going to be practicing, but we're also going to be enhancing the skills you already have. And you can become a terrific speaker.
Let's project forward now to an unspecified time in the future. Your brother decides to remarry, or he decides to renew his marital vows, right? And you've been appointed as best man. And you're at the ceremony and it's speech time.
Do you know what would disappoint me now if you didn't ask me? That it just shows you it's a 360-degree turn. And when I look back on it, it's sort of fascinating. And it's also, it gives myself great assurance that I can actually do something that a lot of people are very scared of. And that gives me a lot of confidence, because I can walk down the street now. This is what I think now. You see, I walk down the street now and I'll know that the vast majority coming towards me, 99% of them can't do what I can do. I could speak to any particular group, but the main thing though is I always want to be prepared.
One last question on your deportment, your physicality on the stage. You're obviously a very dapper gentleman, Sean, if I may say so. And how important is that? So if you compare your style right now with what I'm wearing today, jeans and a t-shirt, how important is it to dress appropriately? Or do you think a lot of the Steve Jobs or the Tim Cooks who go on stage in a t-shirt and jeans?
My rule is one notch above the audience, but only one notch. Because you don't want to be there with a bow tie on and other people are in jeans because they won't believe you.
Well, Sean, it's been a great pleasure talking to you. I love this subject. This is an absolute passion of mine, and it's been hugely educational and interesting talking to you. And I'll tell you why I'm so interested in this particular circumstance is because if you've listened to any of our previous podcast episodes, we talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, we talk to a lot of people in a lot of different walks of life. But it strikes me that regardless of the technical knowledge that people have, regardless of how much of a whiz they are on YouTube or TikTok or whatever it is, the ability to speak, to communicate, to get your message across, to hold yourself, to do all the right things at the right time in order to get your message across more effectively, it's a huge skill. And for a lot of people, it's missing, and this is the gap that you're filling. So how do people contact you?
I have an email, which is sean@speakforsuccessinternational.ie, or they can contact me by phone 086 029 1809 353 for the prefix word.
Or they can get you online on your website.
Yeah, on the website, yeah.
Thank you, and look forward to talking to you again very soon.
Thanks a million, Nicky.